Thanks for jumping on, guys. We are with Ben Patrick, aka Knees Over Toes Guy. Thanks for jumping on, Ben.
Oh, thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking the time. Ben, if we met you at a dinner party, how would you introduce yourself?
I would say that I'm this really weird guy who kind of is obsessed with knees, but everyone's got knees, and if yours are hurting, then it's good that I'm so obsessed with them.
Would you actually
That's
say
how I would
that on
introduce
a dinner
myself.
party?
Sure, I tell people on the street, yeah, when, I'm sitting having breakfast and people are like, I've torn my ACL 2 times. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm like, well, you kind of happen to have the right guy walk past you.
Sweet, I know a guy.
Yep.
So, in your opinion, what's one of the most commonly overlooked practices in the strength and conditioning world? Because I know you're blending some bodybuilding, some SSC, and then some of your own research at the moment. But in your opinion, what is your most overlooked practice?
Definitely just the balance of things, right? So if you look at, I think a super simple example is for thousands of years, Chinese elderly, they've been doing two things that we don't tend to do in Western exercise. Number one, they go backwards. Now, in their case, they're just walking backwards. They're trying to prevent arthritis. And the other thing they do is they spend time just doing bottom reps and squats. So that's another, most people will go their whole life in exercise and not be allowed to squat all the way down. And they won't do anything to strengthen backwards. Now, that's a microcosm of it. They're just doing body weight, bottom quarter squats and walking backwards. And that alone is enough for the Chinese. And they've been doing this thousands of years. They only have one knee replacement for every 19 US knee replacements. And we have a much smaller population. So we're like a knee replacement machine. We're not going to go backwards. We're not going to go all the way down. And we're just going to put you on an assembly line of taking your knees out and having to replace them.
Wow.
It's the balance of things. There's nothing wrong with going forwards, and there's nothing wrong with going halfway down. But there's something wrong with only going forwards and only going halfway down. You see what I mean? That's why I think the number one most overlooked thing that you can go sport by sport and you can become a wizard of injury prevention just by getting those athletes to strengthen in reverse of the motions that they're overdoing.
So where did this philosophy come from with the knees and the thinking behind it? Obviously, it's pretty left of center. So, where did that come from, and how did this all happen?
I mean, without question, Charles Poliquin, he had this statement that the athlete whose knee could go farthest and strongest over the toes was most protected. Now, up to that point, I had been educated very severely, don't let your knees over your toes. I had trained a good 10 years, never let my knees over my toes, had 3 surgical alterations to my left knee. I was well versed in box squats and all kinds of, modern training. I had trained my balls off, and all I really had to show for it was 3 surgical knee alterations, pathetic vertical jump that I couldn't get any recruitment for college basketball. So I had gone nowhere despite really doing everything I was told and working really hard at everything I was told. And now he comes in and says the opposite. And that's when everything started to change for me.
Yeah. Interesting. Charles Poliquin was a great man. He added a lot to the strength and conditioning field. I think his Poliquin Principles book was one of the first things I ever picked up in the industry, and it was a fantastic book. So
that's awesome.
What do you wish you knew when you first started out in the strength and conditioning field? What's one of the biggest things that you were like, fuck, I wish I did that, and I wish I knew that?
What jumps to mind right now is just the idea that there's good and bad human motions. You know what I mean? It's taken me a pretty thorough career of helping people to realize, wait a second, there's not just bad motions, right? Even something like rounding your back, right? 75% of physios will say don't round your back. Yet the actual evidence on it, nothing finds that's bad. And in fact, people who can round better have less chance of back pain and back injuries. But it's all about what you're going to do with that. Of course, if you do something, if you overdo any, human motion, that becomes a problem. But it's amazing that you have to unlearn this. And so many of the best strength coaches in the world now are like, well, yeah, there's no such thing as a bad human motion. Your body was designed that way for a reason. I don't care if you're religious and you believe it's God, or if you think it's just the universe or whatever, but your body wasn't just designed for no reason. And so that overlying philosophy, I have a huge emphasis on training the tibialis muscle, right? That's a muscle low down there on your shin that gets no attention. No one's ever tried turning it into something measurable. For me, that's a standard. Like I can measurably predict if someone's tibialis is strong enough or not with weights. Yeah. And I treat that the same way someone else would treat a bench press and how much they would care about it. But no one's walking around going like, how much do you tib raise? You know what I mean? So you have either movements that are just told not to do, don't lay your knee over your toe, don't round your back, or then you have areas that are just skipped altogether. And then we sit around here wondering why we have shin splints. I mean, it's absolutely comical how many super, obvious areas there are to strengthen, like the tibialis. Not a single study has ever been done on strengthening it, yet dozens of surgical interventions have been studied, costing millions of dollars of research, but we've never been like, well, hey, what happens if we actually strengthen that muscle? Literally not one study ever.
I guess we follow the money trail there as well.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's a blend of money for sure. And then it's people, just kind of following the leader, and you have to have good leaders. And there's a really weird thing where I feel like almost the people driven to be leaders, they feel like they can't work hard, so they better at least be in charge of people, and then you have the really good, honest people don't even want that responsibility of bossing other people around. It doesn't mean that good people don't become leaders, but there's almost an inverse ratio of how much someone wants to be bossing someone around versus how good of a person they are. And then we wonder why we end up with these politicians who we find out later they're complete scum of the earth. That's because they'd much rather be in that position of power. So I think someone who has an ability to help, you almost have to get outside of your comfort zone and be like, look, you've got to take more responsibility. I'm sorry to tell you that. You can't just be the nice guy. You actually have to take more responsibility. That's why I push so hard. You see on social media and these kind of things. I'm not knees over toes guy. I didn't want to have social media at all. And now I have, 148,000 followers in 2 years because I took the same passion for helping people. And I went, well, if that guy has 150,000 followers for learning the latest Instagram trends, and he doesn't even spend any time trying to be up to date to help his clients, here I am busting my balls to be the best coach I can be. Well, I have to compete with that. You see how there's kind of an inverse ratio?
Yeah.
I find that the more a coach is into helping his clients, the more time he's spending on that. And he's not putting enough time into figuring out how to actually then get the attention it deserves. And then you have, social media gurus who are horrible trainers who are doing things that, are either not helping people, or they're becoming they're becoming authority figures telling people what to do or not to do, even though it's not scientific, but it's because they've mastered social media. They were putting their time there. So it's a very, very interesting situation there.
We've gone a few segues there, but I take my hat off to your hustle on social media. I see your posts on that, man. This guy never stops. It's fantastic, but testament to your effort there. One of our friends, Keegan Smith, came to my gym and he showed me most of the knees over toes system in one day, which was fantastic. We got
Keegan's
on the
man.
Yeah, we went on the wall and I was doing tibialis raises. I was like 5 reps. I was like, yeah, I got this.
Nice.
8 reps. I was like, fuck, this is getting hard. And then we got to 10 reps and my tibialis have never had a pump like that again. So I've been,
that's awesome.
It. And the knee pain has definitely gone away, which has been fantastic.
That's awesome.
In the whole knees over toe system, I know you talk about the mastering 26 movements, is it? For optimal human performance?
I've got it narrowed down to 20.
Yeah. So
20 movements.
If there was a few like just absolute bang for your buck knee health prevention exercises, say your top 3, what would they be?
Yeah, and I actually only have 4 direct knee exercises out of those 20. Those are for the full body, right?
Okay.
So for direct knee, I can outline the 4 pretty easily.
Yeah. Okay.
You have a Patrick step up, which is almost just a simplified version of Poliquin step up and Peterson step up, which don't worry, for anyone listening, it's super simple. The idea is you're doing a reverse step up. So the box is behind you and you're stepping back up onto the box. Mm-hmm. And when you lower down on any of these 3 versions, you're lowering only to the heel of the off foot. So you can't push off that bottom foot. So it's a very strict measure of how strong are you with your knee over your toe. These are really base movements. For gym owners, the Poliquin version is awesome, but you have to have like a slant board there. Mm-hmm. And then the Peterson version, you actually have to control the weight onto the ball of your foot yourself. It's actually quite advanced, and it takes some pretty thorough coaching. If you consider Carl Peterson made that for people who are already on the Olympic downhill ski team who are having knee problems. Well, trust me, for someone who's like has no leg strength, even if you have knee pain, that's different than a downhill skier handling 80-mile-an-hour turns who has knee pains from that. They're probably way more advanced. And they wanted that extra calf strength because in skiing, they can almost sit on those calves a little bit to create extra cushion when there's moments of impact on the knee. So it's very strategic for them. So I actually use all those versions, but the Patrick Step Up is the main one. It's a flat box. You don't need anything fancy. You can use bumper plates. You can use aerobic steppers, whatever. 6 inches or 15 centimeters creates a really standard measure. You lower down to your heel. It's super strict, right? So that's one of them. And that's good, but it doesn't get then the benefits of full bend. So once you go to full bend, there's not only the load on the muscle, but there's actually like the internal load. And this can stimulate, the evidence looks really good that can stimulate regeneration of cartilage, thickening of knee tendons. So you have not only the load on the muscle, but the actual benefit of the full bend itself. Mm-hmm. Now, you're an expert of squatting, and some people get mistaken and they think I don't like squatting. I think the full squat is actually the king of lower body exercises. However, for me going into it with 3 surgical alterations to the one knee, and then I had other diagnosed torn ligaments to the other knee, that at that point I was like, I was just done with surgery. So I was like, I'm going to figure out naturally. The level of imbalance for me was insane. So even if a full squat felt good for one knee, I mean, it was too much going on there. Yeah. And being a skinny basketball player with no leg muscles. So the ass to grass split squat, which I actually leave, pretty good free info on this. And then all I do, my whole business is just coaching people's form online. Like that's it. It's not like it's super simple, right? So the ass to grass style split squat, it then becomes one of the other big 4 knee exercises. With those 2 alone, you're doing pretty good because you got the full bend and you got the top strength knee over toe with the Patrick Step Up. So Patrick Step Up plus ATG split squat, you're doing pretty dang good. And just from repetition of those, your ankle mobility starts to get really good. Your hip flexors start to get really loose from the ATG split squat. I show all the time. I don't really stretch, but I show all the time on live things that I can just do the splits cold. If this was a little more interactive, I'd do the splits right now. And that comes from my strength exercises. And with the hip flexor side of that being the ATG split squat, which that hip flexor length then becomes linked to back pain. So all kinds of awesome benefits just from those 2. But there's a reason there's 2 more direct knee exercises that I use for this measurable building and predicting. And when it comes to the quads portion of it, you think, okay, Patrick Step Up for the top quarter, ATG split squat for the bottom quarter. You're covered top to bottom, right? Like top to bottom, the legs are covered. But in actual sports and life, there's this sort of outer range. And so this traditionally has been called a sissy squat. And I actually tried getting people into it as a sissy squat, but everyone hated that name. So really, sissy is short for Sisyphus, who was a Greek mythology character who had to roll a boulder up a hill and had the strongest quads in the universe. Just so happens English language, sissy, doesn't sound too good. It sounds like a sissy. You think it's for sissies, right? Yeah. So it didn't work. It didn't catch on. Plus, that exercise is so difficult that the version I was trying to teach of a scaled version, right? So imagine, go look up Tom Platt's sissy squat, right? And you're like, oh my God, like my knee would explode. What I'm talking about, talking about is lifting up padding 1 foot high, 2 foot high, and just lowering your knees down to the padding and then going back up. And over time, like you're a strength coach. Have you ever met someone who could not get stronger? Like they had some just like birth defect that their body refused to get stronger on anything. I've never seen it.
And I've had the most paralyzed people with horrible injuries and illnesses and ailments, and they could all get stronger.
Right. So pretty good chance anyone listening to this can get stronger. The trick is just to find that pain-free level and then get stronger from there. And then, strength radiates a little bit. You show me a guy who can incline bench 150 kilos. He's going to be able to flat bench that whether he flat benches or not. It's not like he can't flat bench 50 kilos because he hasn't done it before. So every time you get a little stronger at a pain-free range and then you recover, I typically do these drills once a week. I do them as much as 3 times a week if it's just like body weight. Oftentimes I'll have people like start with just 12 weeks of just body weight on these, and they can do them a few times a week. But typically we're talking about just, good quality strength training, 5 sets of 5 with, once a week on that each movement, and you get a little bit stronger. So now you see me, I can do these deficit ones. My wife knows I go outside, I've got a newborn. So I'm like, okay, I got to get a workout in 5 minutes, right? I do 100 bottom quarter squats. So quads are on fire. And then I stand on a ledge and I do 20 deficit KOT squats in a row, 20 deficit sissy squats in a row. So I've got some of the strongest outer range knee strength on the planet from, little 5-minute workouts, just from understanding just how someone else would get good at push-ups. You know what I mean? Well, I've just figured out how to do that for knees. So now if you think, okay, top quarter strong on the Patrick step up, bottom quarter strong ATG split squat, you're balanced from both those. And I really like that. So now the KOT squat, now that outer range, now for freaky moments and for just extra strong legs. Because you probably find this, that most people have come from traditional half squat deadlift. They have stronger hips. And when they squat, they're more afraid to use the knees. And so just in general, I find this is I find that KOT squat, that, modified sissy squat for progression, is huge to plateau bust squats for guys with weak quads, but strong. You got a strong deadlift, but a weak squat. Yeah, man, you're going to love the KOT squat. So those 3, now you're covered top to bottom, outer range. And then you just throw in the Nordic, and that I kind of use, again, a sort of like, my blessing was I was the worst athlete naturally, made fun of my whole life. Right. So, the Nordic, it's usually like a feat of strength. Like you see it on ESPN.
Who's laughing now, though? They see your athleticism and they're like, damn, this boy can jump.
Exactly. Exactly. So I had to figure out the Nordic down to something that anyone could do and that could scale. So now I can do them easily, but that then, make sure that you're strong really right there behind the knee. Because yes, RDLs are awesome, and back extensions and glute ham rate. These things are awesome, but they don't get the way that the physics and the levers work out. They definitely don't get right smack dab behind the knee like that Nordic does. So I actually use in my full 20 movements, I use a nice full stretch RDL. I use a single-legged back extension with a hold at the top of each rep to make sure you're balanced and you have that strength, that extension. But the Nordic is its own unique movement. So those 4, you can see that compared to traditional lifting, well, what happens now if you spend weeks, months, years, you can build up some pretty incredible strength around the knees. So I definitely get results of people who are like, oh my God, 3 workouts in and my knee pain's gone. But that's not exactly, I'm more just trying to give people the tools to add to their full repertoire. You know what I mean? I never set out to be a knee specialist, but if that's what people need help with, and if I have to accept that role, that's kind of what I've done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Awesome. So Patrick step up, ATG split squat, sissy squat / KOT squat, and Nordics. Cool.
And Nordic. Those are the big 4 knee exercises. And to give you I can tell you the math on them right now.
Yeah.
So I tend to.
We're here.
Yeah. So I tend to use 2 numbers. One number is what I do think anyone can get to and should get to. And then the next number is like, okay, you want to be world class at that. Like say you're a rower, right? Like rowing is like, a lot of upper body component. Say you're a rower. Well, I think you should get to the standard on all 4 of those. But let's say you're a triple jumper. You should get to world class on those. And the rower would want to get to world class on some of his upper body pulling exercises. So the standard is I do think anyone can do 5 flat Nordics. And it's, really simple measurement. Can you do Nordic? Being able to do 5 good ones of that, really strict. Being able to do for males 80 kilos on Patrick step up 6-inch box, like that should be comfortable, pain-free. World class is more like 120 kilos on that. And on Nordic, world class is actually single leg. So I've progressed a lot of people now to being able to do it single leg. If you watch, I keep up free tutorials on that. You can see, what that means. So not everyone needs to do a single leg Nordic, and probably people trying to pursue a single leg Nordic who aren't going for like world-class speed and jumping are probably adding more injury risk than anything, even by trying to do it right. So I think that going to the standard is really the mark that is going to make you as healthy and protected as possible. And then you have to decide for yourself, like, you should be in a sport where you need to work towards that world-class number. So same with Patrick's step up, 80 kilos for males, 50 kilos for females. You're good. But again, okay, are you going to be, landing from dunks? Well, you might want to work towards world class. And then with the ATG split squat, it's actually just 40 kilos, so 20 kilos each hand, flat ground. So for some people that take quite a bit of time to progress to. And front foot elevated is not the same loading. Flat ground is more load on that front leg than a front foot elevated, just based on the levers and the angles. So 25 kilos for females, 12.5 kilos per hand, and 40 kilos for males, 20 kilos per hand. These are very doable numbers. But again, I mean, you walk into a gym and you see a guy 20 kilos each hand going flat ground ATG split squats, like, his knees definitely out of 100 people, he's got, in that, only one other person out of 100 random people would be able to have a knee capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And then for the KOT squat, it's pretty simple. For males, it's going down to a 2-inch pad. So I never advise doing this like to a hard surface. It's always to a padded surface.
Yep.
Or then world class is where you can stand on something and then you have no surface at the bottom. You're just open air going to a deficit. That's world class. But for males, the standard is just going down to a 2-inch pad for 10 reps. And for females, it's going down to a 6-inch pad. So those are the 4 numbers right there for those movements.
Awesome. So what would be for like the regular person, the progression? So like how long would it take from like broken to like a decent level of strength using your system?
I find that, probably 6 months is a good estimate, but that's because I like to start people about 12 weeks, so a few months of just body weight, getting used to that stuff. And then a few months of actually starting to add load to it. But that's totally an average amount of, I would say 6 months to the standards, 6 months to the standards, and then more like 2 to 3 years to the world-class numbers. It's a very different, as you know, like, okay, getting to 100 kilo bench versus 150 kilo bench. It's not like it takes a third longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's wild. So in your Instagram bio, you say 1,500 success stories with knees.
Yep.
What would be your biggest accomplishment? Would it be that, or having a son, or what would be your biggest accomplishment for Ben Patrick?
I mean, I definitely think you gotta break up life into parts, right? And
100%.
You can be doing so well on one part, but you could still be depressed. You know what I mean? If you didn't have another part. So I do think it needs to be complete. So I wouldn't try to compare those things, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I was kind of realizing like that, every time I get a win, it's really cool, but it's almost like you were saying, like, what's the end game, right? When you're an athlete, it's like, well, I want to win a championship. Then you get there, you win the championship. You're like, well, that was awesome. But then like, a couple months later, you're like, well, shit, what do I do now? So I definitely have already exceeded, what I would have set out to do. I think I set out, I really wanted to be able to, I figured if in my career, I could get like, 1,000 knee success stories, that would be awesome. Right. Already in a couple of years, over 1,500. So I thought about it a lot. And to me, my end game, I have a really good system right now where people can do any program, they send in their form, and they actually get the form coaching. And that's really cool for them. But what does something like CrossFit have, right? CrossFit has community aspect and competition, right? I don't think I can ever get onto the scale that I need without community and competition. So I have a full-time web developer, and we're already super thrilled with our service, but no doubt our, couple year goal is to have something, since we do the form coaching, to have something where your app has your profile and you can actually see your full score. So you can actually have a little pride in it, and then you can see anyone around the world. It's, this is simple stuff that he'll have no problem doing. It takes time to code it, but it's almost adding some of that social aspect. It can be embarrassing to go to a gym and do stuff that no one else is doing, right? But if you can go find other members in your area and, and meet up with them. So to me, that's kind of like, I'll feel like I got there when I can actually turn these 20 movements into some community and competition. I feel like my members, will really love that, and it'll kind of put justice to what I'm doing. when people can get that fun out of it and really just have that community and competition. So it's pretty simple for me. Like that's my career goal, to have that and to keep fine tuning that.
I'm sure it drives itself a little bit or quite a bit at the moment, but I guess once you add that component to it, it's like a couple of guys go down the park and they're like, yeah, here's my near Virtuo score. What's yours? And then they're like, oh shit, I got to get on that. It's only $49 a month. It sells itself without all the other stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, I want my guys to be able to have that sort of fun, you know what I mean, with it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think it's just going to be so cool. And no doubt from a business standpoint, like what if CrossFit had no competitions? You know what I mean? And if each gym wasn't called CrossFit and was just named something else, like it never would have become, CrossFit. It's for people, it's cool. I used to do CrossFit and it was cool to know like, okay, I'm going to Hawaii. I can just look up a CrossFit gym and drop in for a workout and be around other like-minded people. So I'm not going for world domination, just a little bit of that. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that it would be a little bit of that. And like, yeah, it's not cool to do tibialis raise and seated good morning and ATG split squat. But hey, if you can get a little bit of credit for that, you know what I mean? Maybe even see what other pro athletes are doing and just bring a little of the pride into an exercise system where the goal is really to just have, upper 1% health. And it's
health.
People deserve for that to be cool,
Awesome. So Ben, what are you curious about at the moment besides knees?
Well, I do these numbers for the whole body. So for sure, it's like, and because we coach the form on it, it's just like a constant analysis. And it doesn't mean it's not like, oh my God, you're 76.3% instead of 77. No, I try to find like simple things, you know what I mean? Simple, measurable things. You could see there, the numbers I mentioned are like, pretty rounded, simple numbers, but definitely doing that for the whole body and, continuing to make solutions for people. I keep it pretty simple.
Yeah. Okay. So Benny, what's something that people misunderstand about you?
Probably just that there's sort of a rebel, that I'm trying to do something unscientific when in fact, I'm actually just using what science has said to do. So like, for example, I use tibialis raise. Well, there is one study that says, wow, this is really interesting. We should find solutions to strengthen this muscle. That was the conclusion from the doctors. You see what I mean? So I'm just following what evidence is indicating to do. Hundreds of research papers that doctors are concluding, okay, not only is full bend squat, contrary to popular opinion, not only is it not bad, if it's progressed right with really good coaching, it actually can prevent lower body injury and stuff. Okay, hundreds of research papers for that. Now dozens of research papers coming in showing that a half rep split squat has some awesome benefits like a half rep squat does. Well, no, duh. I mean, put them together, full bend, ass to grass, split squat. Like it's like you have literally cumulatively hundreds of research papers indicating that would be a good idea for people to rebalance and get full bend, but zero studies have been done on that exercise. So without question, I think that's the number one thing is that, I get, okay, for all the good stuff you see, you have to think, I think about 1 in 50 people like actually is a scumbag and they look for anything, different in society to come after. So I get people every day who come after me with all kinds of stuff and I just block them. I don't have time for that. But based on what they're saying, I can see that, yeah, the thing they're assuming is like, just giving like scathing remarks about how I'm like not following, you know what I mean? Like unscientific or something. When in fact, I'm following exactly what science is saying to do. So that without question, that's like the number one misconception.
Cool. So you are science-based.
100%. I'm just not waiting 20, 30 years, for obvious tests to be done.
For it to get proven, yeah. So
exactly.
If you could have a meal or sit down for dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
First would be you, simply because I live in the moment. So my mind can't really go outside of that yet. Yeah. So I'm like, I've been talking the whole time. And my strategy on any podcast, you can see I'm very open about any number. I'm just trying to provide value. Yeah. To me, it's like anyone wants to listen is like, I'm just ridiculously grateful that someone would want to listen. So I've been trying to talk and provide that value to your listeners, but I didn't get a chance to talk with you. Yeah, but
Definitely.
I didn't get a chance to talk with you. So right off the bat, I would want to talk about you. You're a gym owner. I owned a gym for 6 years before I went fully online. I would love to talk with you. Then rest in peace, Charles Poliquin. I mean, I paid about $10,000 to like get, about maybe 15 minutes talking to him. So without
Yeah.
question, that would be a conversation I'd want to have, because due to money, he was driven to make a lot of books on bodybuilding, right? And so he has
Yeah.
like books on arms and this and that. So you won't find him right about so many of the things that he told me about in person that were just much more personal for health and for athleticism. Like, what's the secret to 1 foot jumping? What's the secret to this and that? Which, if you scour anything he's ever written, you can't find a word on it. But he talked to me in depth in person. So I did get, before he died, I got to, every question I possibly had was answered. But I'm sure now, after the last couple of years, I'd probably be able to come up with some more.
Mm.
And then probably the third one that would be interesting would be Jonathan Edwards, who was a triple jumper from England, who I think is just a really interesting example because he broke the world record in the 90s. And he was almost 30 years old when he broke the world record in triple jump, which is the most elastic human measured activity, because high jump and long jump are close, but triple jump, you're now taking that jump and having to bound into another jump. So if you look at sports training, elasticity as a whole is largely neglected, in the sense we're always studying power and acceleration and hips, but like, look at your glutes, right? Biggest muscles in the body, but your gluteal tendons are tiny. Go downstairs, tibialis, calves, small muscles, Achilles tendon, massive, much bigger. So we spend almost 7 times more money studying acceleration than deceleration. So now here he is in triple jump, almost 30 years old. Here we are 25 years later, and his world record still stands. And he was a 5'11" white dude who was so unathletic naturally that England told him, fuck off. Like, we're not even going to sponsor you. And their orthopedic specialist told him that it was physically impossible for him genetically to become successful as a triple jumper. And not only was he successful, but he's the most successful of all time. And when anytime someone's breaking a world record, closing in on 30 years old, when most of their peers had their best marks in the early 20s, to me, that's something very interesting there, because it proves that he was doing something to get there that did not just have to do with puberty and genetics, which is, most world records come from puberty and genetics. You see a guy, the first Caucasian to break 10 seconds in the 100 meters, Christophe Lemaitre. I mean, the guy's been an absolute shit show, no offense, but no duh. He was running his fastest like 10 years ago. People thought he'd be the next Usain Bolt, but I saw his workout routine. He's doing lat pull downs, half rep bench presses, leg presses. And I'm like, not only is he not going to get faster, he's going to get slower. And that's exactly what's happened. So Christophe Lemaitre was a product of genetics and puberty. And now, with all the resources, with all the sponsors, with all the best trainers, he's gotten slower. So now look at Jonathan Edwards, who was a nobody when Christophe Lemaitre was breaking 10 seconds in the 100 meters at that age group. Jonathan Edwards was a nobody. And even to his own disbelief, he wound up breaking the world record. You know why? Because he just kept getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit. So I would love to talk with that guy. I know he was doing like 20 Nordics a day. Charles said that that was actually the secret to 1 foot jumping. So people think I'm like, crazy with this, obsession with Nordics, but it's kind of common sense when you understand the mechanics of a single leg jump, and you have up to 8 times your body weight in eccentric knee flexion forces. So there you go. Those are my 3. You, Charles, Jonathan Edwards.
Yeah, that interesting list, especially the first one. But back in 2015, I was working in Arizona. My boss was like obsessed
No way.
with Charles Poliquin at the time, and
No way.
he was like, he spent a ridiculous amount of money. Actually, Jim Compost from
For sure.
University of Arizona, and he was like, "Cool, here's all my notes from Charles Poliquin seminars." And I went through the notes.
No
It
way.
was like a stack of notes, like personally handwritten ones, and I was like, "This is the craziest strength and conditioning knowledge or notes I've ever written in my life." None of it had any particular relevance to anything that I was doing at the time, but I could go through it like every year and just get something else out of these notes, because just the concepts he had and the things he was talking about were so far out of left field. I thought, this dude is, he's a really smart dude.
He's the biggest genius in my opinion. And I feel someone like me is basically just someone who's someone who used his knowledge to go from being completely broken, you know what I mean, to freaky bulletproof. So I've just taken his knowledge from a perspective of trying to apply it to the fellow broken people like me, you know what I mean? Whereas he was training mostly national level athletes already and kind of didn't have the patience for people like me, you know what I mean? So that, plus I have an obsession with simplicity. And as you know, he was anything but simple. It was very complex, right? So I think I'm kind of like Poliquin for broken dummies, you know? But in taking that viewpoint, I've also come up with some solutions that he didn't come up with that millions of people need, because he wasn't dealing with those category of people. He was dealing with already national level athletes. And I was doing it young enough to still test with my own body. So from the time I studied him, when I started studying him, 19-inch vertical to now 42-inch vertical, only documented case of an adult going from sub 20 to over 40-inch vertical. But imagine if I was much older and not training myself, right? I would not have the knowledge I have now, you know, and I think he would have been even better in terms of applicable knowledge if he had done it early enough to be like trying to break 10 seconds in the 100-meter. You know, like if Charles had tried to break 10 seconds in a 100-meter sprint, we all would have had so much more usable, simple knowledge towards, you know, athleticism and stuff like that.
Imagine that guy trying to.
But he was doing arm workouts.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Right. But the pursuit of that, you see what I mean? Like the pursuit of that, I think, but again, it's like things happen for a reason. And, you know, for me, that was my blessing. You know, the knee surgeries were my blessing, the lack of genetic ability. And then being in a sport like basketball, which is dominated by taller, longer arms, way better tendons, way more athletic naturally. So that kind of was my blessing, that it's like, I had to really like get down and dirty. Like I need some like changes, you know what I mean? I don't need theories. I don't need supplements. Like I need some massive changes to my performance, and I need it fast. Because when I studied him, I was already like a couple years out of high school, which in America is like, if you think you're still going to get a college scholarship a couple years out of high school, you're delusional. But that's exactly what I did. So I was in that category of like, you know, 1 in a million chance to still have a sports career. And that's what I did with the data.
Awesome. So what's the one question I haven't asked you, but I should have?
Sure. Oh, what's one question you have? Let's see. Maybe probably just the simplest, you know, entrance points.
Yeah.
So like how to use the data I'm talking about. So I mentioned backward walking. So, all right, what's your favorite sport? Is it rugby?
Soccer.
All right. Soccer, right? If I was training a soccer team, at least 3 days a week, I'd line up the whole team on one end of the field with, you know, you're in grass, maybe 100 kilos on a sled, and I'd have the whole team go backwards. And let's say there was 20 players, right? So if you all went backwards, whoever made it there first, all right, you're fine. Everyone else stays in line. So it would be like the hardest workout of the guys' lives, and I would get my team stronger backwards than any other team on the planet. But you can just start by walking backwards. If you can walk backwards, you could drag a pound backwards. Take a 1 kilo dumbbell, string it onto a chain, drag it backwards. So that would be the simplest entrance point for that. And that's like a warm-up exercise. That's a conditioning exercise. That's like the oil to the whole machine. It's not necessary. What I mentioned there, the direct knee exercises, those are very exact and measurable. Whereas a sled, you can't tell the friction of the sled, the friction of the surface. That just helps the whole thing. You could use as a warm-up, a cool down, but I wanted to mention that one. Then with the Patrick step up I mentioned, the goal is 6-inch box, 15 centimeters, but there's nothing wrong with starting on a 2-inch or 5-centimeter box and just going to rep failure. Reps work really well in beginning stages. Go until you burn out on reps. Especially for guys with ego issues, often we get bummed out if our strength is there, but if the pain holds back how much weight we can lift, right? So start on a 2-inch box and do 100 reps, and then do a 3-inch box for 50 reps with an empty bar and blah, blah, blah. So no one can't do that exercise. It's just where you start. And then with the ATG split squat, you may need to elevate the front foot. Most people probably will. And you might even need to go inside a power rack so you can use assistance with your hands. So again, people are like, oh, my knee hurts to full bend. Well, it probably wouldn't hurt underwater. So, at what level can you full bend? And there's even stuff like flossing, which is really cool. Just go ahead and look that up. I have, free stuff on that. But knee flossing for someone could help them by pinning down the patellar and quad tendons, the IT band, and the hamstring tendons, could allow them to get into that bend and then get into front foot elevated assisted ATG split squats. And then again with the KOT squat, people are like, oh, I can't do that. Well, you can. It's just about how high you elevate your knees. So if you can even walk, you can do a sissy squat. Keep adding up padding. So in a gym, that would be using aerobic steppers with maybe yoga mats on top would be an example. Your gym, you probably have nicer boxes. Like, what do you use for? Do you have
we got these soft plyo boxes.
Yeah. Oh, those are perfect because you have the height and you have the padding, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Start on 2 feet or whatever. And you're like, oh, but my knee's only moving an inch. Yeah. But like, that's the point. And then go to burnout there. Live to fight another day rather than just saying, here's what I can't do. Because without question, what all the evidence indicates with your knee is like, yeah, you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Like, you're literally going to have a knee replacement if your knee is completely incapable. So to me, it's like something to be grateful for that you can even use it at all. So those were the main ones. Nordic gets a little trickier, but it's actually just about elevating your hips with padding. So like you mentioned, those soft plyo boxes.
Yeah.
All right. You get set up to do a Nordic. You don't have to now imagine putting padding at your hip level. And so now when you go down, you're only going down a certain amount of the way. And then you're actually using your spinal erectors to initiate the movement, almost like an Olympic lift. It's funny. People will go like, wait, that's like on the way up. That's like bad for your back to explode. So then what, like every Olympic lift ever is bad? I've done this with thousands of people. We use the way up to teach our nervous system how to fire. The way up and the way down of a Nordic are two completely different things. And by firing through the hips and activating as much fast twitch fibers as we can on the way up, well, now we have more fast twitch fibers activated. And that's one reason people progress on them so fast, is because when you do it with this style, it's almost like you're getting an Olympic lift on the way up for your hamstrings. And then you're doing eccentric training on the way down. So it's pretty dope. And people make really fast progress. People, again, they get to these flat Nordics, within 6 months, but it took me like 6 years to because when you don't have that area that you can really smoothly do and measure, because with your pads for the Nordic, okay, I can do a Nordic at 15 inches, at 14 inches, at 13. So that's when the gains get really good. People on chin-ups, if you can get them into some degree of that versus people who've just been a decade and they're like, I just can't do chin-ups. And then they stay not being able to do chin-ups because they think they can't do chin-ups. If you can't do chin-ups at some level and you never work on it, it's only going to get worse. Same with your hamstrings, which are really fast twitch. So unless you're sprinting, decade to decade, your hamstrings are going south unless you are doing something for them. So for those four, I just wanted, without question, that was what you should have asked me is, okay, like, how does anyone listening to this get into those exact movements I mentioned?
So thank you, Ben, the Charles Poliquin of broken people. I like that. For
and dumb, broken and dumb.
Broken and dumb people. Thank you so much. How do people find you? How do they get on your service? It is an amazing service.
Appreciate that. At Knees Over Toes Guy on Instagram is a great place to find me. Do my DMs under 24 hours. So if someone has any questions, they could ask me there. But then, without question, I try to make it a really simple and affordable service. As I said, for broken and dumb, I think it's really simple stuff. So I don't charge a lot of money for this. USD $49.50 a month. And ever since Corona, we just always leave up a 30 for 30 code. So you can do a month for $30 and there's no long-term contract. So kind of like whatever level you need me. And I put that in my bio. It's atgonlinecoaching.com. That's my business name is ATG Athletic Truth Group. So atgonlinecoaching.com, affordable, super high service. You'll learn tools the rest of your life. And if I can get there, you'll not just learn them, but, I'll eventually have it where it's kind of cool to do so. And you might want to, stay on. But at the moment, you can just use it, as much as you need till you feel like you've got those movements sharpened, that your form is perfect, that you know what you're doing.
Thanks for jumping on. You're an absolute brain of the knee. There was a lot of science going on there. So I appreciate you taking the time, brother. Thanks, man.
Hey, I really appreciate you. Can't thank you enough, dude.